Hello believers, welcome to the show. I'm back in my favourite place. If you listened to the show before, you'll know that to be the shopping mall / cruise liner that is Ocean Terminal in Leith. I was planning to record this from the bookshop here, but it's closed down. It's all boarded up, as are a lot of other things. Yeah, it's a very sad state of affairs actually, but who am I to stand in the way of progress, because I believe there's going to be a new hotel being built down here. So no bookshop, but I am sat in the Ocean Bar having a pint of beer, looking out through the big windows at some of the boats. If I crane my head I could see the Royal Yacht, but it's far more interesting to look at this group of Norwegian sailors who have just arrived on some kind of miniature warship. They've got some great hats on. It's kind of like a bonnet with a little red bobble on the top. I think they're Norwegian anyway. Maybe they're here to see the Norwegian penguin that's here in Edinburgh Zoo. Apparently that penguin has been bestowed with a military honour, so it's quite high up in the Norwegian army. Anyway, this is a podcast not about me sitting having a pint, but about creative minds talking about what they do and how they think, and art and culture and TV and such things. Predominantly the X-Files, which I'm working my way through. Also working my way through Twin Peaks Season 3 and Shogun and Curb Your Enthusiasm Season 12 and How To with John Wilson and a new audio book series of 1984 by George Orwell and Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast about nuclear war and a couple of short stories by George Saunders and a 3-hour-long documentary about the making of Alien 3 and some Stephen King novels, but that says more about my short attention span. Does it matter though? I don't know if it does. Should I commit to one thing? I tended to have that problem most of my life, try to finish that book, finish the script, finish that film, one thing at a time. Embrace the chaos. I say it's all grist to the mill. And if there's one overarching theme to this podcast, it's that everything you do and experience in life tends to feed your creative output. So on you go, whatever works for you. I'm annoyed that bookshop's not open because I had this whole intro about taking a leaf out of the book of today's guest. It's beautifully written, but you got to roll with the punches. So here I am with this watery lager and these Norwegian sailors. Today's guest is the book blogger and proprietor of the Geek Emporium Cosy Book Club. It's Cara Fielder. As well as writing about books and reading books and writing short stories, Cara has also been a bookseller herself, as well as an alt hair model and a veterinary assistant and lots more, which we'll get into. And I'll put a link in this episode's notes to both the Tattooed Book, which is Cara's book blog, and also the Cosy Book Club, where you can check out her online shop for all things gothic and spooky and cult. Cara talks about modelling in the days of Myspace, exotic animals, chronic fatigue syndrome, the positive influence of heavy music, the responsibility of reviewers, Frankenstein, and naturally we get on to speaking about X-Files Season 1, Episode 18, entitled Shapes. Do drop me a line at believemepod@gmail.com with any questions or feedback, or if you fancy a chat. We're also on X and Instagram and Facebook. Like and subscribe, leave us a review or a star rating, that really helps. And I'm going to finish this pint and probably won't actually go and speak to those young Norwegian sailors. I think that's probably a cocktail for disaster for a man of my age. Anyway, here's Cara. Strike me as someone who's just done loads of cool stuff. I think I said in my email to you that a really interesting journey to where you are today.
Yeah, I grew up kind of on the Surrey-Sussex border, pretty little village, which is super cool for growing up and absolutely the worst to be a teenager in. So, you come back to it as an adult and you're like, I can appreciate it again now. I didn't have any particular career goals in mind, probably apart from similar to 99% of the population as I saw Jurassic Park. I wanted to be an archaeologist, but apart from that,
Yes.
once I realised it wasn't discovering a new dinosaur every week, I was like, oh no, I'm over it now. And was very sporty. And then at 13, my health kind of just took a downfall, and I just started sleeping like all the time. It's all I wanted to do was sleep and sleep and sleep.
Right.
And I guess probably after about a year of that and trying to see all sorts of different people and find out what was going on, I was diagnosed with ME / chronic fatigue, whatever label you want to give it. So kind of choosing a job path kind of wasn't a conversation anymore. It was just like, get some exams if you can, which I did. I was very, very lucky that, I had people that helped me scrape through that. And I always loved English, was like my favourite thing, even studying Shakespeare, which I think most people hated. I was like, I loved it. Once I was well enough, which took a good chunk of years, I did get back to university in my early 20s, studied animal management, which was great fun.
Is that so? Where did that come from then? Have you always been like an animal lover, or is it just when did that idea pop into your head about doing that?
So a couple of years earlier, I'd say I got a dog, a French bulldog, and I think he gave me such great structure of when I had to get up and I had to exercise a little bit every day, kind of for him.
Yeah.
It really improved my health and everything to get me moving a little bit again. And then once I realised, oh, wow, I am capable of doing more than I thought, it was then taking a step to get back into education and try and regain some kind of a semblance of a semi-normal life.
And how is that now? I mean, how's your health now, and how do you, have you found other ways to deal with it? How's that kind of manifest itself of a day?
On the day-to-day, it's mostly under control. It is something I know I'll always have to manage. Like, I know it's never gone away. If you can exercise, I have found it's a great thing for it. I know it doesn't work for everybody. And it is one of those illnesses that just people don't know enough about. Although it seems to be like there's a huge amount of research going on at the moment, as it seems to be a bit of a COVID fallout as well.
Right.
Just kind of exhaustion illnesses. So it's good to see that there is some funding going into research and hopefully some more deeper understanding of it to come. I guess pacing is the main thing. I remember having a conversation with someone, I think it was last year, and they'd been a bit poorly with something temporary, and they're like, oh, I'm still so exhausted. I have to think about, what I'm going to do for the rest of the week, and I have to pace myself. Like, some things I have to say I can't do, and I'm like,
right.
That was a shock to me to hear someone say that, because I didn't realise everyone didn't do that.
Right, yeah.
So I was like, oh, I know I've been doing that forever. As long as I can remember, I've been like, well, if I do something on the Monday, then I will definitely need the Tuesday to do nothing, and potentially, if it was like a big thing, then I would have to take quite a few days and possibly the rest of the week not really doing anything in my spare time, because you need the energy to work. So there's a lot of balancing energy requirements, and that can be quite a stressful thing. For example, like, most people love going on holiday, whereas I don't quite know what energy I'll need for what. It's something I'm never quite sure of how to balance being out of my normal routine.
Right. And I mean, has that fed into you having to be fairly regimented, as you are planning things coming up then? Are you like, well, I can't do this, or I can do this, because I am going to feel like I'm going to need some downtime? And I just wondered how that might have affected you as a teenager. If all your friends are saying, come out to do this, did it affect you in that way, in terms of what you could experience as a teenager growing up?
Yeah, definitely. It wiped out, I'd say, maybe 2 or 3 of my teenage years, because I was so bad. I didn't have much of a social life, and it was, it was kind of months between seeing friends and stuff. So it did have a large impact on my life then. And I mean, it was almost like training for the COVID that we've had,
Yeah.
When it came to isolation, I was like, I've done this before. I'm fine with this. I know.
Yeah.
I did this for much longer than this. So I kind of just reverted back to how I was when I was a teenager and threw myself into like household hobbies and stuff that you could do. In that perspective, I was quite lucky that I knew how to deal with that, whereas I know a lot of other people close to me really struggled. And I guess it was just like kind of had this experience before where I'm incredibly isolated and I know how to try and make the best of it. You know, it's not great for anybody, but yeah, I was a little bit more prepared maybe to deal with it.
And does your kind of love, because one of the things I associate with you is, you know, how much you love heavy music. When did that start, and when did you first, you know, what were the sort of bands you were listening to growing up, and when did you think, right, this is really what I'm into? And has that helped as well, you know, because I know a lot of people have had their own experiences going through the pandemic and, you know, with exhaustion, the type of things they're dealing with, and they found turning to music and listening to music as an escape and a release and something they can do, even if, you know, they can't get out, they can still in their head, you know, travel with music. So
oh yeah, no, 100% agree. I feel like all music and all forms of storytelling I've just find wonderful escapism, and I love a good story in any shape or form, and music was definitely something I used to kind of take myself out of the world a little bit. I think as a teenager I was more into hip-hop, and metal is kind of maybe like the last 10 years was something that I've got into more and more. I was an absolute emo scene kid for all my sins. So
yeah, no need to apologise. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I still listen to it. It's you know, it's a phase that's not going anywhere. But that, and I will always have a passion for it because it was my gateway music into heavier stuff.
Yes.
So, you know, people can tease me for loving my chem as much as they want, but I know that it got me through to other things.
Family members say that about my sister, who's, for want of a better word, a big old goth, and she's, you know, they said, oh, it's just a phase, she's going to grow out of that, and, you know, 15 years on, she's still at Whitby Goth Festival every year, and, you know, amazing. Head to toe in leather, and yeah, she'll almost to sort of spite people, but you know, I don't think it's. I wonder if it's, you know, when you get into it, it's a thing for life, isn't it? There's something about it, and there's been I'm talking about heavy music here. Quite a lot of research recently about the sort of benefits, and I don't know. The example that comes to mind is I was speaking to another friend, someone who's been on the podcast actually, who said their brother runs a stall at various music festivals, and we're talking about the worst music festival and the best music festival in terms of behaviour. And he said worst behaved, top 10 was like, number one worst behaved was like Leeds and Reading, right? You know, like people throwing beer and, you know, turning over portaloos and setting fire to tents and that sort of thing. And without a doubt, best behaved festival was Download, because it was like just dads, you know, taking the sons and daughters to see Metallica and everybody having a good time. And I wonder if it's the catharsis of that, which, you know, really does help you in your day-to-day life, I think. And that's certainly what I get from it. I always say that when I listen to it, I don't listen to a lot of indie music anymore because I don't really like to feel sad. But I do listen to a lot of metal because I feel like anger's a workable emotion. You know, you can channel it into something, but anyway, there was no question at the end of that. But so what are you? I mean, what you're listening to at the minute, and what is it about? You know, in the last 10 years that's sort of drawn you to sort of heavier bands.
I think for as long as I can remember, I've always enjoyed really angry music. Like you mentioned a minute ago, there's just something, and a similar thing to storytelling in general. Anything that seriously moves me, and whether that's horror or anger or anything like that, any bit of media that can completely bring an emotion from nowhere, I will get absorbed by, and I will envy the creator, because I'm like, oh man, how amazing would it be to just write a 3-minute bit of music that could take someone on that might be on a massive high and bring them to tears, or completely the opposite, to bring them from tears to feeling like they're psyched and ready to go. That's like such an incredible talent, and I don't know why it's the angry stuff that has always appealed to me. but I guess that's probably a level of venting,
Right.
like
Yeah.
that you can just get it out and leave it in the music and carry on with your day. But I do find angry music incredibly relaxing. Like, my mum did not play a lot of music when I was growing up, but when she did, a hell of a lot of it was panpipes and like very chilled out, relaxing music.
Absolutely love it.
I can't stand it. It makes my skin crawl. It makes me so stressed to hear something that slow.
Yeah, Muzak just removed any kind of emotion from panpipe moods, isn't it?
Exactly. So for me, I was just like, no, I need something faster. I need something quicker than that. And yeah, I think from emo to punk to thrash to hardcore to screamo, whatever it is, those things always grab my attention, and the slow stuff loses me. You know, whether that's some sort of ADHD thing, I have no idea, but it's the speed that grabs me. Like, I need it to be changing up. It needs to be quick, and angry grabs me too.
You were about to go to uni to do, or you did go to uni to do animal management, and you know, how did that go? And you know, what were the next sort of couple of years after you did that? And what was it? What were you thinking of being a vet then, or what was the kind of thinking around that?
Do you know what? I didn't really have a clear idea of what I was
cool.
doing. It was literally like, okay, I get on really well with animals. I was like pretty healthy around them. Like, they weren't too draining. So I just went and did a course and saw if I could manage to do a course. And then when I completed the first year, they were like, oh no, you're doing well. Do you want to do the next one? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, that would be cool. And I think I did end up getting a part-time job at the weekend as well, just a Saturday job at a local veterinary surgery. But I was quite lucky that it was near Gatwick Airport. So we had a lot of exotics there.
Right.
Which was like a very fun experience, kind of being a bit of an assistant exotics veterinary nurse, I guess, at that point. Spending hours and hours washing tortoises, or, you know, like they had wallabies there, so I'd go out and feed the wallabies every time I was there. Like, it's a really lovely working environment.
Do you have to like specialise then in like exotic animal medicine, or is it like? Because it takes longer to train. Presume it takes longer to train to be a vet, because you've got to figure out the physiology of several animals rather than just one.
Yeah, for a vet perspective, I never went that far, but I know training as a vet is a ridiculously long, although necessary, process.
Yeah.
So I kind of got derailed from doing veterinary nursing, but I did a lot of hair modelling. That was a very strange experience, just being headhunted on Myspace, of all things.
Oh, those are the days, weren't they?
Yeah, right. The innocent days. I entered an online competition and won that. And the people from the website reached out to me and they were like, would you like to do some more? And it was not a world I'd ever really considered. At that point, I had like such a low opinion of myself. I think probably, you know, with a chronic illness and not feeling like a fully functioning human. I was like, oh, there's an opportunity. I could do something with that, and followed it for a while, and took me to a couple of countries and met some people I never would have met any point. And
wow. Yeah,
it was a huge horizon broadener. And don't get me wrong, there were people in those worlds that I wish I'd never met, but 99% of it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'm thinking Zoolander. That's the image I've got in my head.
Nothing that exotic or that like high end, should we say?
Right.
But you know, it was always nice to get my hair cut like by incredible professionals. Like I had done for like British Hairdresser of the Year, and that was a lovely feeling at the end of it to have some like photos that I now be able to look back on forever. And I was like, yeah, I did that thing, and you know, I'm in the background of that music video, or you know, that kind of stuff. It's nice. It was, you know, an experience that could have easily passed me by.
Were you forgive my ignorance, how would you get booked then to do, I guess it's like any other modelling agency, is it? Would a booker basically think, oh, Cara looks good with that sort of hair, so we can book her for this music video because everybody in this music video is going to look like that? Or is it basically like you've got a good shaped head?
I mean, one of those is very clear. So I was often booked because I've got a really long neck.
Right.
Which had nothing to do
Great.
with how you look or anything at all. But just if you have a shortcut and a long neck, it takes better photos a lot of the time. So for hair stuff, it was that. I was with about 3 different agencies. They were all like alternative based agencies. So anyone coming in wanting something was looking for unusual hair colour, tattoos, piercings, you know, whether you're more curvy or, you know, any other physical things, you know, just not the norm. Then that was kind of a given already, that they were using those agencies and coming to those people.
And at what point did, you know, have you always liked books, and have you always been a sort of voracious reader? Because it's been interesting to hear about the art of book selling as well, because I know that's something that's kind of close to your heart. Because I'd never really, I don't know, I was in Bristol and I went into a Waterstones, and I really saw how it worked from a kind of selling perspective. And I've worked in like publicity and marketing my whole life, but to be sort of, I guess there's an element if you go into a good bookstore, I'm into this type of literature, so could you recommend me this other type of literature? But I did notice one of the staff really pushing, you know, a local author, and they talk about it. Every single person who came into the till, they pushed this local author. And then I overheard this conversation that he'd had with his manager, and he was like, yeah, we've got a couple of those away today. And he was like putting a nice display on, and he must have shifted about 50 of these books by the end of the day, because I went back in and they'd all gone. So I was really sort of you know, glimpse behind the wizard's curtain a bit about how that works. I know the book industry is colossal, but just good to hear about, you know, you talk about your relationship with reading and books and when that started.
Oh, I was probably only modelling like for about 3 years. So after kind of that, I needed a real-ish job as well to like make a little bit of like stable money. And I just took a W.H. Smith's job in local shop. Thought, you know, that's cool, that'll fill some time. The girl that ran the book section left and no one picked it up, and kind of no one was employed to do it. So I was like, you know, I should do that. So I just sort of started doing it. And I just remember seeing a copy of Frankenstein with the most beautiful cover. You know, goth tendencies coming out immediately. And I was like, oh, that looks creepy. And I was like, I kind of know a very rough outline of the Frankenstein story, but I'd never dreamed of reading it. I was like, you know, I'm going to read it. And literally that book just rekindled a passion that I'd lost. Wow. I don't even actually know if I ever properly had it before that. Like I know I liked reading as a kid, and I loved some comics and things like that, but I think university, with all the reading I had to do rather than enjoyed doing, kind of killed it.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, after reading Frankenstein, and it being a bit of a challenge to read as well, because it's, you know, it's not the easiest thing in the world not to go from not reading to reading something that old.
Yeah.
Like, I had to reread like the first chapter like 3 or 4 times to get the terminology fluid in my head as I read it. But once it clicked, I was like, this is amazing. This is great. Like, and I loved it.
Yeah, it's quite a shift, isn't it, from, you know, just coming from what you think the story of Frankenstein is, I guess, based on the films, or, you know, the image of Boris Karloff or something, and then when you actually read the book and realise how sort of, you know, modern it is, and the sort of structure of it, and it's told from, you know, various perspectives, and, you know, the amount of sympathy you feel for the monster. You know, I guess modern is the word I'd use. You know, it felt like a real, and I've only read it actually in the last sort of year. I read it for the first time, and I was really kind of blown away by it, actually. And I guess it is a sort of, I can see now you've said it, that would be a kind of gateway to a lot of the things for you, you know, and the things you've been interested in, be a sort of flashpoint to sort of rekindle your sort of love of reading. And so it did that then, did it? Did it, you know, you read that, and then did the sort of floodgates open of other stuff other literature you would be interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of threw myself into the world a little bit more, and after a couple more months in that job, I moved into working, as you mentioned earlier, Jeb, worked in Waterstones for several years afterwards, and like just being surrounded by other people that love books as well. I mean, it's kind of like contagious, and like my boss at the time could see how passionate I was when I joined, and she was always recommending me new things, and I was very much into sort of the darker side of fiction at that point, like just sort of darker sci-fi and horror and all that kind of stuff. And she kind of introduced me to the more literary stuff that I also really enjoyed. It's kind of an area that I wouldn't have known how to start reading, maybe. I'd kind of put myself into, like, I like these genres and this is where I sit. And she really helped me, in several ways. She got me working full-time as well, like being very supportive from going in as, like, I think working 1 or 2 days a week. She'd always be like, do you think you can do more now? And I remember I turned her down several times until I got to the point where I was like, I think I can work full-time now. And also introducing me to some of my favourite authors. So yeah, owe her a lot.
Who are those authors then, and what do those people mean to you?
Sarah Hall, I think, is one of my favourite authors of all time. She wrote a book called The Electric Michelangelo that's heavily based on tattoos.
Right.
As a theme, but trying to think of the best way to describe her writing. She finds the humanity in people and can kind of dissect them in just a couple of sentences, and you know exactly who they are. It's an absolute skill. And I think after I read that book, I've never been more envious of an author. That I was just like, I would love to do that. And also more disheartening because I was like, I don't think I can ever be that good.
No, well,
it was an equal thing. But yeah, one of my favourite books of all time. And like you said, it's one of the perks of a bookseller, that you could have this incredible passion for something and feel like a book can change your life, and then you can just go to work and be like, tell people about it, and you can share that with other people and give that experience kind of thing to other people, and then to come back and tell you how it impacted them as well. It's a really beautiful thing that I've not really managed to find in any other job.
Wow, that sounds really satisfying. That's sort of how I've tried to approach working in film publicity, for the last 10 years, where it's, with varying degrees of success. It's easier to do it with a first-time filmmaker or, something in, let's say, a Czech bit of cinema, rather than a sort of action, gangster B-movie. Nothing wrong with Danny Dyer, all power to the guy, but... to be able to sort of recommend things, and especially, because we've not, and again, from a film perspective, it's there's no video shops anymore, and it's that kind of word of mouth thing, and really makes a difference, I think, and to have someone, like you mentioned, your colleague there, who is a kind of guiding light. I think that's totally invaluable. Are you reviewing much at the minute, and when did you start reviewing as well as selling the books?
I started reviewing probably a similar time to when I started working for Waterstones. I literally did it as a diary for myself to begin with, because I have an extraordinarily bad memory.
Right.
So I could literally show people several books and be like, I love this, and they'll be like, oh, why? And I'll be like, no idea, it was over 6 months ago, I couldn't tell you.
Sure, yeah.
So I started writing it down so I could look back on something, and it helped me to remember. And then people just started finding it and reading it, and this was the more positive days of Twitter as well, or X.
Yeah.
It was Twitter then. And I'd start sharing things on there, and I found a really strong book community, and there still is on there, and was very embraced by people in the publishing industry, from shops to publishers themselves, and the news side of things. And was really caught up in the whole scene of book selling. And it was at the time I was in it, it was a really lovely world. I just couldn't keep up with the amount of stuff I wanted to read. I don't blog as much now as I used to. I'm doing it kind of as a job, as a 9-to-5. So it's been harder for me to kind of enjoy it in my downtime when I'm doing it as a 9-to-5 job as well.
Yeah.
Although it's not book related in my regular job. But I am trying to make more of an effort to do it. And also just, I have not read as widely as I have previously. And I've always struggled a little bit with, should you review things you don't like?
Interesting, yeah.
I still really struggle with it because I'm reading something at the moment and I have what I feel like are quite constructive criticisms. But at the same time, I know how much work goes into writing a book, from the author through to the marketing department. And I'm like, oh, I know how I would take someone criticising something I did. And there's always, you know, it's just one opinion. And also I might be missing something completely that they're like, oh no, you haven't read deep enough into this, or, you know, I might be coming at it from a completely different angle. So I've only ever written, I think, 1 or 2 very critical reviews when I've been really sure of myself about them. But also it means you have to read the whole thing, because I always feel like if you're going to have a fully formed opinion of something, you have to read from beginning to end to understand it.
It's
is that also a waste of your time if you're disliking something? So
yeah, I guess a couple of things out of that is, and again, my experience is from the film industry, but I always think it's I got a bit of an insight into how the acquisitions world works. You know, film distributors in this country, how they buy films, and also being on a couple of like judging panels, seeing films that come in, reviewing, watching films on screener links, and then a lot of judges basically watch 20 minutes and go, nah, I'm not going to watch anymore.
Oh, really?
And, you know, they can form an opinion on 20 minutes. And I feel like it's your job, you know, to like you say, to read the whole thing. There might be a nugget in there, a kernel of what the author or the filmmaker's trying to do that's like, you know, worth championing and worth kind of latching onto. And I mean, that's my justification for watching a lot of 80s trash, that there might be something in there that the filmmaker intended and kind of got lost in the way. But yeah, it's, I guess also critics have such a platform and such a responsibility in a way. And I see a lot of quite shitty reviews for British films in the press, in the kind of highbrow press as well. And I almost think it's like, yeah, let's be analytical about it and let's be objective about it. But also part of me thinks the British film industry is really struggling. And, you know, you're in such a position of power. And to give a film, I was working on a film recently that's shot in the Northeast, and one newspaper gave it 1 star. I was like, this is not a 1 star. Objectively, a 1-star film is like, you put no effort into it, you know, the effects are bad, the acting's rubbish. And none of those, yes, this film was quite fairly stock genre piece, but it was shot well, it was acted well. And I felt like that is such a... And luckily, you know, everybody involved in that film had gone on, and they've gone on to making different things, and they're all fairly established. But if you're like a first-time filmmaker, you get a 1-star review. That's it. You're finished, aren't you? You're never going to make another film again. I don't know. You either got to have a thick skin, or you've got to have incredible backing. There's a sort of... there's certainly a responsibility there as a reviewer, you know, to what you do. So yeah. Do you and are you writing as well? Have you ever fancied yourself, you know, putting pen to paper and writing something narrative at any point?
I have tried and tried repeatedly. I can't get past short stories, so I just can't seem to stretch a story out long enough. And I've had a couple of ideas which I've got so excited about, and I've plotted them out, and then they've been made by somebody else as I'm working on them, which has been a bit devastating when I've like, yes, I've got this, I've really got it nailed this time. But as I think someone else pointed out to me, that's a really good thing, because you're heading in the right direction.
Yes, yeah.
Because those things have been commissioned, they've been supported, they've gone out there. So your ideas are working, you just need to be quicker with them.
It's I always thought there was maybe a bit of snobbishness in this country about short stories, in a way that there wasn't with American literature. Like, it's really like an art form. It's like, it's its own thing. It's like writing a really good short story in this country. It's almost seen as a sort of, I don't know, a stepping stone. Maybe different to if you're writing genre literature, because, you know, the kind of ghost story and that kind of works in short form. But no, I'm all here for the short stories, and I look forward to reading those at some point when when you've eschewed the people in power who are knocking them out, quicker or what have you.
Hopefully one day.
So now the online shop as well. When did that idea come about? Because some of the stuff you're selling on there is absolutely fantastic, and I keep meaning to. Certainly the X-Files stuff you're selling, I need to get on buying some of that. So when did that kind of come into your head as an idea to set that up?
It's just something that I wanted to do creativity wise. I'm not quite sure exactly why. I was something like, I'd like to do that. I did a small writing job for a friend, and it's a little bit extra money, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do something like real with this money. I'm not just going to, I have a tendency to do whenever I've like, a bit of extra cash is get tattooed. I was like, no, I'll be a sensible person. And I bought what's called a Cricut machine, which is similar to a printer, but it cuts instead of putting out ink.
Right. Okay.
So it can cut vinyl and card and all that kind of stuff. And while researching all the things I could do with that, I just learned a whole bunch of skills and weird little things about, how to make your own t-shirts and tote bags and candles and design and stuff like that. And it was just a kind of, I think that was a little bit towards the end of lockdown. I just got totally immersed in it. I was like, oh wow, I could actually do this stuff. And it was just a wonderful creative outlet at a time where I think I had, where I work for a university, there wasn't a break for COVID.
Right.
And did a lot of extra hours and stuff, and I was feeling a little bit burnt out on that side of things. So I was kind of looking for a new creative outlet to where writing kind of wasn't it at that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So making stuff was kind of a little bit of a replacement at that point that kind of allowed me to turn my brain off a bit as well. Just had a few people asking for bits and pieces, and I was like, you know what, it'd be quite nice to see if anyone would be interested in buying this stuff, and people were.
It looks great, all laid out. It's wonderful. I mean, would you think about, I realise this is flying in the face of progress and the future, but would you think about opening up a sort of bricks and mortar place at any point? Or
oh no, I'd love to have a little shop.
Yeah.
Like, I've always really liked working in retail and selling things that I have a passion for. I just find that really easy. Yeah. Like, it's basically, it's you get to talk about your favourite stuff all day. Who doesn't want to do that? That would be a great thing. And there's still this thing in the back of my head where I'm like, if I won the lottery, I'd still want to open a little bookshop.
Yes.
Like, financially, would it be a massive mistake? Probably, but we're talking, lottery dreams here.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, and put my own stuff in a little bookshop, and yeah, it would be an absolute dream.
Exciting. I can see that in Whitstable. I don't know why. Whitstable's come to my head as you having a shop there for some. Yeah.
I've never been. Do I need to go?
I think there's just something about I don't know if it does have there's so much kind of supernatural going on in Whitstable. I think it might be a history of kind of witchcraft, maybe.
Okay.
I'll Google that.
I'm sold.
Yeah. I know because of the material you sell in the shop that you like the X-Files and you know about the X-Files, but would you class yourself as an X-Files fan?
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely a fan, but not a hugely factual knowledge-based fan, should we say.
That's what we like here. And, I think people think I am an X-File, in inverted commas. I'm watching it basically for the second time through, and I don't remember half of it, and I have to do a lot of research before these chats. And then people who email me going, actually, I think you'll find Fox eats sunflower seeds and not whatever I said, peanuts or something. So apologies, Simon, about that one. But yeah, so I presume, did you watch it growing up then? You watched it first time through when it was on British TV? Yeah,
I do remember. And it's one of the first things I can remember seeing on TV that was very equal between, you've got an incredibly intelligent man and woman. They're working together. And at that point, it was like, that's just what they do. They're sort of best friends, and that was it at that point. She was just as tough as him, and there was just something that really drew me to both characters, because I think they are and probably similar for a lot of people that really enjoy both sides of my brain.
Right. Nice, yeah.
They want the logic, they need the logic, but they also kind of really want to believe in the mystical side of it and the more supernatural side. But I am drawn to the logic.
Yes, and of course, you know, in this one, we do get Fox saying, I want to believe. Yeah, it's nice to hear him actually say those words. So this is, the one we're talking about is Season 1, Episode 19, Shapes, directed by our good friend David Nutter. And he's actually got one of the cast members of his films Transfers 4 and Transfers 5 in this, Ty Miller, who plays the character Lyle. And Cara, if you've not seen Transfers, then I do heartily recommend that. This is not a Transfers podcast, but it's very quickly descending into a Transfers podcast. Totally ridiculous sci-fi film. And it's, in a sense, it's about... Well, it's kind of like a werewolf story, isn't it, at its heart, with kind of a Native American folklore trappings. And we could get into what a Manitou is or what a Wendigo is later on. But it kind of starts this episode with classic nighttime X-Files, some thunder and lightning going on. We're on a ranch in Montana. There's lots of taxidermy animals on the wall. And one of the farm hands are loading a gun. Something scaring the sheep and goats, the torches flashing around, and then we see a kind of flash of these ghoulish-looking eyes watching the farmhands from afar. Then the shotgun goes off, bang, and we cut to what we think's going to be this weird monster or beast lying on the floor, and it's actually a dead young man who's got blood all over. And then we cut to the X-Files credits, but it feels more like a stock werewolf episode, this, rather than really wanting to grapple with the intricacies of Native American folklore. And I know they do try to at least get into that, but it's maybe not the right format for an exploration of it. But what did you think? What did you think about this particular episode when you went in?
I did enjoy it because, in general, the Monster of the Week kind of episodes are my favourite.
Yes.
And there are influences from different areas that I really enjoyed, like when he is like changing in the bathroom. I was like, very American Werewolf.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, love that side of things. Like you said, it was the should we say maybe not researched enough touch on Native American history and stuff. When I tried to start researching, I was like, I'm not sure either. I'm not doing my research, they're not doing their research, but like you said, I think it was kind of a bit of a blend of maybe too many things. They tried to do too much at once, maybe. Yeah,
because one of the Native American characters, Ish, I think his name is in this, he explains what a Manitou is, but then I did some research after. He explains it as like a bad spirit, but then I did some research after it, and I don't think it is that. I think it's like a Manitou is any kind of spirit. It's like a spirit that's involved in nature, and it could be the wind or it could be a lot of things.
Yeah, I was finding life force was a term repeated.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I think like Jane Goldman had said in a book that it's essentially saying that likening a Manitou to a crazed man-eating beast is like saying Charlie Manson's God. So I think if you're from a Native American background, you watch this, you probably are going to pick it apart. Even though, like I say, they do try very hard to get a cast of people from that community in, and I feel like there's like a funeral pyre scene, and that feels quite authentic. But again, I've not spent time in those communities. I don't know. I don't know how that would actually go down if it went on. But God bless them, the X-Files. This is probably one of the least problematic the X-Files episodes. Having watched Roland, where there's someone with learning difficulties and goodness knows what, they do try. But I mean, have you got a favourite episode that you like, that you kind of go back to?
So I definitely have. I don't know if I could describe it as my favourite one, but I know it's the one that kind of unnerved me the most. And when I remember seeing it on TV for the first time, it genuinely being something that everyone was discussing the next day. And I'm very annoyed at myself that I can't remember the title of it, but I think it's end of season 2. I think it's another standalone horror-based one, and it is a couple of guys that live together, and the opening scene is them kind of like burying a kind of mutant baby. Do you know the episode I mean straight away?
Because a lot of people say home. There's not that one, is it, with the kind of the incest going on in the family?
Yes, that is it.
Yes.
Now you said it, I'm like, that's
up.
the episode.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, like, there's a reveal where something is pulled. I don't know. I presume you're going to discuss it. Something is pulled out from under a bed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember being like, oh my God. Being quite young, seeing it for the first time. Like I was blown away. And then just as an adult looking back on it, I'm like, just the fact that you could affect that many people, and so many people were talking about it the next day, which I don't think you have quite as much now, although maybe a little bit when things are released onto streaming and stuff. But yeah, at that point, it was everyone had to watch it at the same time. There's just a really impressive like thing to be able to do that, and I think it did get banned, if I remember right.
It did. I don't think they've shown it on British TV since.
Oh really?
Yeah, and that's great, because I always like the ones where it's not. It could be supernatural, but it's not actually supernatural. It's just totally messed up. You know. I mean, what I liked about this particular episode as well, Shapes, is it's so damp, isn't it? It's so wet. Even by X-Files terms, it is the whole place is sodden, and I think they shot it in Vancouver. But you really feel it, and Gillian Anderson looks frozen a lot of the time. She really looks cold.
It's a really silly thing that stood out for me. So, I don't. There's a scene when the guy is turning in the bathroom, and she's trying to undo the lock with a screwdriver. Yeah. And it's the most awkward way I've ever seen anyone try to undo a screw in my entire life. And I don't know why. Like, I've watched it a couple of times now, and every time I see it, it just stands out to me. It's like, what are you doing? Like, how are you going to undo that? It just looks insane. But in general, I really like all the locations they've chosen. Like you said, they've made a real effort to get actual people, actual Native Americans acting in it, which seems like a given now that you would, but back then was still not so much. So considering, taking into account how old it is now, like I think they were doing good for the time. Yeah. But still now it's very questionable, and I know the overall themes, like there's quite a lot of Native American stuff to come after this throughout the X-Files, which I can't really remember how it's handled, to be honest, because I'm doing a similar thing to you. I'm starting from the beginning and watching all the way through. Oh, great. Have you just started doing that? Yeah, I started about 3 weeks ago, yeah. Cool. Where are you up to now with it? Shapes is where I'd gotten up to. Yes. So it was perfect timing. Great. That's good. Yeah. Yeah, because I know there's a lot I haven't seen of the more recent stuff. I'm committed this time though. I'm like, I'm gonna push through. I've been told there are some great new episodes, so I'm like, okay. I've seen a couple, I think, right. And I was like, there's stuff in here that's good. I guess the last couple of things to say about this is, I did really like the sheriff in it. He's actor called Michael Horse, he's also in Twin Peaks. He plays Deputy Hawk, I think. He's in quite a lot of that. I just made a point about them putting out an APB. It's like, we've put out an APB, so don't worry. And it's like, in every single chuffing crime show I watch, we've put out an APB. Like, that's like, I just wonder how many times in real life cops actually do that, and if it has any effect whatsoever. And if of a day you've got, like, if you're a regular cop on the beat, you've probably got 50 APBs out. You don't pay attention. It's like just something we say to victims' family. It's like, oh, we've put an APB, so don't worry, we're keeping our eyes out. But fair play again to the X-Files for at least trying to inject an element of realism into the whole thing. I was just going to say, the character did a good job of like bridging two worlds as well. Yes, yeah. Again, I think he did sort of add a level of authenticity to it where
what he was saying, I was going, fair enough, this sounds legit. This sounds like something that would happen or not happen, or, you know, we're not going to have an autopsy because that's going to interfere with the person's soul or spirit. And I was like, that sort of totally makes sense. But so have you got a timeline for watching the rest of it, or are you just ambling along nicely, or are you like, because when I started this, I've really strayed from the path here. I was like, I'm going to try and watch one every night. I'm going to really power through here. And when I start something, it's like Letterbox. I'm like, I feel overwhelmed by films and TV, and almost like a need to get through it. Like, even if I'm not enjoying it, I've committed to this task now. But are you just like, I've got nothing else to do tonight, I might as well watch an X-Files?
Yeah, I think that's the way I'm approaching it. Like, so towards the end of the last year, I did a similar thing watching ER. I was like, just remembered ER. I was like, I loved that when I was younger, and did a similar thing where I was like, do you know what? I'm going to commit to watching the whole thing. And it's almost like where you said you get quite overwhelmed with movies and TV. So do I. Like, I have endless lists of recommendations from friends and family and things I do want to see. So it's almost quite nice that I can take a series that's this long and just be like, I don't have to think about anything else.
Yes. Yeah.
I can just watch this for the foreseeable. So yeah, I'm committed just to basically watching the X-Files for an awfully long time.
How exciting.
I was trying to do all of Attack on Titan as well recently, but I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to park that.
What's that? I've never heard of that. What's Attack on Titan?
It's an anime that
I
think started around 20... Oh, no. Actually, I'm not even going to guess, but I know it's finished. So I was like, now is a good time to go back to it. And so I could have got the entire thing. I don't know why I quite like having entire things completed before I start them, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, totally. Yeah.
So yeah, but I've parked that. I'll go back to that one later. And now, yeah, completely into the X-Files for what I presume will be quite an extended period of time now.
Just before we go, I'd love some more book recommendations. And I'm, into the similar sort of thing that you are, anything sort of messed up, for want of a better word.
I think if you want a bleak book, the best and one of the bleakest books I've read of the last, I'd say 5 years, but it was a lockdown read that I read, and I was like, whoo, this one hit. It's called Tender is the Flesh.
Okay.
And it is set in a near future where I think it's some unknown illness has made animals inedible. So there is a genetically created kind of human that's used as cattle.
Oh, right.
And kind of introduces a semi-acceptable form of cannibalism.
Superb. On board.
Uber bleak. 0 laughs, no fun, and absolutely brilliant.
That sounds fantastic.
I recommend just having a dog or puppy or cat or something around at the end to cheer you up. Maybe some Red Panda videos, something to pull you up afterwards. But yeah, that was wonderful.
Believe Me is written and edited by me, Chris Boyd, with production support from Steve Marshall. The music is by Johnny Boyle, and our logo is by Russ Brown. See you out there next time.